YouTube a moment. Let me know where you're from. As usual, if you have any questions as I go through this, I'll have my kind of a lesson portion of this at the beginning of the video and then answer questions after that. But let's check YouTube. And it should be firing up any minute now. There's always a delay. I think it's like live for some people, but it takes a moment over here. And now we're, okay, I think we're live. All right, I am Drew Badger, the founder of EnglishAnyone.com and the English Fluency Guide. And today I'm going to be sharing something that's actually probably going to be very surprising for many people. If you've been following my channel for a while, you might know this already, but this is especially for new people. I'd like to share a story and then really go into some detail about how fluency actually happens, how you become a good speaker. And this should hopefully make some sense for people who have been struggling for a long time. Maybe they know a lot of English or they know a lot of grammar rules. They kind of understand them logically, but they have trouble using them correctly and automatically in conversations. So we're going to talk about that in this video. All right, I'm excited about this one. I wanted to start today with a story. So this is something that happened with my family. This was a few days ago, and I was at home. I woke up and I was asking my wife if she made me some eggs, because often she makes some eggs for our daughters. You know, they're getting up and going to school, and she makes some breakfast for them. I usually just make my own breakfast, but she will often have some eggs. And I asked, did you make any eggs for me? And she says, I'm sorry. Make sure you can see that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I slept over. I'm sorry, I slept over. And when I heard that at first, I thought, oh, okay, I understand what she's trying to say. She meant to say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I overslept. I'm sorry, I overslept. And what I want to talk about in this video is how this happens, how people make mistakes like this. Now, first, I want to say my wife's English is actually really good. And I would say like her Japanese is, or obviously her Japanese is amazing because she's Japanese, but her English is, it's probably, I would say she knows more English than I know Japanese. So her English is really quite good, but she will still make mistakes like this based on how she learned. And before I get into that, I want to just finish this story. But basically, this is what I explained to her. So I'm sorry, I slept over. I slept over. So she's using the correct words, but she's not putting them together in the right way. And so here, this slept over, this means to sleep over. Sleep over. Sleep over means to stay at somebody else's house. And so you can see how this would be funny to me. You know, in the morning she was like, oh, I'm sorry I slept over, meaning I'm sorry I stayed at someone else's house, which I would be maybe, well, probably pretty sad about if that had happened. But so she said, I'm sorry I slept over. She meant to say, I'm sorry I overslept. I'm sorry I overslept. So to sleep over, this idea of over, it's really talking about distance. So like in a regular, everyday, casual way, you might say here and there and over there. So here, there, over there. So something over there is further away. That's why we talk about sleeping over at someone else's place. And often, so this is two words here, to sleep over at someone else's house. And we might have one word where a lot of, this is kind of a typical American thing, well, kids will have sleepovers. So a sleepover, this is one word, a sleepover or sleepovers. This is when you stay at someone else's house. Like kids will stay at their friend's house, or you'll have a birthday party that is a sleepover where people will stay, all the friends will come over and they just sleep at their friend's house. So this is a sleepover or sleepover party. Now, overslept, this is a different thing. Over sleep. To oversleep, now it's easy to see how you could get these things confused because it's basically the same word, but the thought process, thinking about these things, really shows the difference between someone who understands the language well and someone who has kind of learned it as a second language and they maybe memorize some words, but they don't really understand what they're saying. And so in this case, like this is an easy thing to confuse for a non-native speaker. So I slept over or I overslept. Now when you overdo something, to overdo something means to do it too much. So I could overthink something, for example. Overthink. I'm sure you can think of some others. Maybe I overate. So you could overeat as well. So anytime you're really doing something, you're being like overactive or overthinking, overdoing something, overeating something, or you could even drink too much, like overdrink, overdo it. All of these examples are doing something too much. So you've got like you're doing something, but then you do it too much. You're overdoing that. So if I were to show this visually, so I might, like here's maybe 0 and I eat up to like this level, let's say, I don't know, this is like 10 or something. So I eat this amount of food, but if I eat too much, now my stomach is not feeling very good over here. So I went over this amount. So I went past or I went beyond that. But we talk about this as overdoing something. And so when you understand it like that, you think, oh, now I actually understand what this means. And so now, like when you hear the word, you should be, as I'm explaining this, having these little aha moments, what I call an aha. So this is like a flash of insight. It's like, oh, I finally understand what something means. So an aha moment. So as you experience aha moments by understanding the language as a first language, that's how you start speaking, because you actually feel confident that you understand something. Okay? So hopefully that idea makes sense. So I explained this to my wife, and I said, it's okay if you oversleep, but please don't sleep over at anyone's house. Okay, so I'm making a little joke with my wife using that, but now she gets the idea, all right? So the point is not just to learn the words to a low degree, but to actually understand the vocabulary really well so you feel confident using it, all right? So this is an example. Just wanted to start this with a very quick story about that. I want to go into more detail to compare these two different ways of learning, especially for new people, because we always get new people asking us questions, and I like having these videos where we can send people there, hey, just watch this video and it will explain everything you need to know about why you're struggling and what you should do instead if you want to become a fluent speaker. All right, so again, just to give a quick recap of this story for anybody joining us late. So my wife woke up and I said, oh, did you make any eggs for me this morning? She said, no, I slept over. So sleeping over means to sleep a distance away, like you're staying over at someone else's house, when she should have said, oh, I overslept. Just like I overdo something, or I overdid something, or I overthink something, like you're thinking about something too much, I'm overthinking something. People might often hear this, like, don't think about something too much, don't overthink it, don't overdo it, don't do it too much. So that's a different thing. We're taking the same words, but we're using them in a different way. And when you really understand them like a native, as I've explained them here, that's what it means to understand something as a first language, the same way a native does. And how you learn is how you speak. So if you feel very confident that you understand something, that's really where the speaking comes from. So you don't become fluent by taking like a word like over and just repeating it again and again, because that doesn't help you understand the vocabulary better, okay? I can just repeat this word over, but people typically, when they think about over, they have this idea of here's a box and the ball is over the box, okay? So here, maybe the ball is on the box, but over, there's usually some kind of space or distance between here. But we can also think about this horizontally, like something is here and then some other thing is over here. There's some other distance between those things, okay? I'll go back and check chat, and then I want to go into this idea in detail and really compare these two different ways of learning because it all begins with a belief that people have, and if you change this belief, it will change the actions you take to get fluent, and those will change the results you get to become a confident speaker. All right, let me check chat. If people have any questions, just go ahead and post them. I will do my best to answer them as usual. Allergy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hello from Gambia. Look at that. Gambia representing. Good morning. I'm Frank from Taiwan and now trying alive in Canada. Well, welcome to the program. Hopefully you are enjoying Canada. Dehemis says, or Dehemis, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'd like to say it correctly. A hug from Brazil, the toy. Again, I think I remember you from before. If this is the same toy from before. Hello, Drew. Greetings from, again from Brazil. Arturo is here. George is there. Eduardo, a lot of people from Brazil there. Hi to fall asleep. So fall asleep is a little bit different. This is that same idea of like you're awake, moving from being awake to, oh, now I'm kind of falling. You can imagine yourself lying down like that in bed and actually falling asleep. So you move from waking mode into sleep mode, the same way a computer would. Mohammed says, when I talk with my mother tongue, the sentences automatically generate on both my mind and tongue. So the question is, how can I do the same with the English language? That's a great question, and we will be answering that in this video. So Nicholas says, hi, what's new? Well, what is new? What's new over here? It's really hot here in Japan. All right, Elaine says, I didn't understand sleepover. Well, hopefully you understand it now. Let me know if you do not. My job here is really to make the language understandable so you feel confident and you start speaking fluently. All right, let's see. Kathy says, hi, so glad to learn English with you, or your, you wrote here, but you would say you. Welcome. Analia says, hello from Argentina. Okay, Mohammed again, answered that question already. Nazira, excuse me. Hello. And Jelly says, good morning. All right, so let's take a look at these two different ways of learning and explain why this happened, so how this particular example happened. And again, I will say my wife's English is very good, and I will notice times when she is speaking, when I notice she feels very confident about something, and other times when she does not. And usually the times where she feels confident is because she understood something as a first language, or when she doesn't feel so confident, she tried to learn it as a second language, like the way most people learn languages in school. So let's compare these. I think maybe there was one. Hassam says, hello from Morocco. Painter says, what's the difference? I made it very deep and the depth is over. I made it very deep and the depth is over. I don't quite understand, like in what context are you talking about? Because it would be like deep and depth could be used in the same situation, but we can also talk about those in like figurative expressions as well. Like if I'm in trouble, you could say I'm in deep trouble. Like something is often, we get that idea from water. Like we feel like we're in deep below some water. So we can think about that idea and apply that to feeling like we're trapped or we're in some kind of trouble. Let's see, Jill says, how often do you take English lessons? Well, we're just doing these lives just to answer questions from people. And if you want to learn more about actual classes, you can click on the links in the description below this video. Flavia says, you're an amazing teacher. Thank you for sharing. You would say thank you for sharing your lessons. It's my pleasure. All right, so I want to make this idea very simple for people. Again, we always have new people joining us, and I want them to really understand why they struggle to speak, especially after they've been maybe learning English for many years. So this happened to me, of course, trying to learn different languages, so French, Spanish, what else? Spanish, French, Latin, and Japanese, and I struggled and failed to learn all of those things because I was learning all those things as a second language. So I'm just going to put, we're talking about English here, so I'll put ESL and contrast that with EFL over here, which is learning English as a first language. But this idea applies to any language you're learning. So I could be learning Japanese as a first language, learning Spanish as a first language, etc. The basic idea of this second language thing is you're learning through translations, but it's also how you learn the language. So I'm trying to study rules or memorize vocabulary rather than getting lots of good native contextual examples. So I see real natives speaking in real ways and in real situations, which really helps me understand the language well. So the most fundamental part of this is the belief that people have. So we're going to cut this off here. So the first part about the difference here between an ESL learner and an EFL learner is the belief that people have. And that belief is that speech triggers fluency. So if you're learning English as a second language, the advice that most people get is you need to speak as much as possible because speaking is what gets you fluent, okay? And so if you believe this, then what are you going to do? So these are, we'll just put make sure I can fit this in here. We'll just put a B here for belief, and we'll put an A here for actions. So the kinds of things you would do if you believe this, then what kinds of things are you going to do? Well, you're probably going to believe that I need to speak a lot, so you would try to speak a lot. So you try to speak, maybe talking with friends or people online or however you can speak. And if you're unable to speak with people, then you're going to think, I'm not able to get fluent. So often when people who are learning English as a second language, they're trying to learn more and they never feel like they really know enough. So they might have a really large vocabulary actually, but they still never feel very fluent. So again, the basic way that people are learning a language is they will try to learn something and then try to say that thing as much as possible. Okay, because again, the belief here is that speech creates fluency, or speech triggers fluency, or speech causes fluency. But this speech is the main driver of that, the main thing that's going to make you fluent. So if you can't speak, or you're trying to learn as much as possible, you're always continuing to learn, and you're typically trying to study more. And maybe you think you need to live. We'll just put live. So live in an English-speaking country. So speak, learn, live, and these are the kinds of things you would expect. So if you don't get to speak a lot, or you don't really learn so much, or you have trouble, maybe you think you just don't know enough, or you don't live in an English-speaking country, then you are probably not going to get fluent. Okay, again, it comes from the belief. So the belief, we start with the belief about how fluency happens or how fluency develops, and then we take that belief and then we start, people have beliefs and then they apply that belief with some kind of action. Okay, so what happens, we'll just put an R here for the result of this. Now, the result of this is really interesting, and typically this is like people, they will start learning and they will try to speak, but they don't really feel very confident, so they get frustrated, and now they're feeling like they don't understand something very well. They're feeling very nervous, but they still try to speak, and they're basically stuck in this loop here. So it's what we might call a vicious cycle, or just a loop where you stay in the same place for years, you keep learning more, you try to speak, you don't really feel very confident, but okay, maybe I need to learn more, or I don't speak enough, or I need to live in an English-speaking country, or I'm not young enough. Whatever the reason is, you're staying in this loop, basically. All right, so this is just, I'm trying to make this very simple for people, but it begins with the belief that people have, and typically this is because of how people just learn in school. So your teacher will tell you, okay, I'm going to teach you some things, here are some translations of the language, and now I want you to go and study that. It's really on you as the student to get fluent. So the teacher will tell you things, that's what they call teaching, and then it's on you to become fluent in the language. All right, hopefully this makes sense. Now, it should become a bit more clear as I explain the EFL method, but the EFL method is actually the opposite belief, which is really interesting. So when I was first learning, and this was maybe 15 years, I believed this, excuse me, as well, so that speech triggers fluency, or speech develops fluency, or speech is the thing that's triggering your ability to communicate. But with EFL, the actual thing that's happening is we've got fluency, develop speech. So you actually become fluent first as you understand the language better, and that's what gives you the ability to speak. Okay? So this is really the most important idea. If you can just change this one way of thinking, then it will also change the actions you take, and it will change the results you get that help you communicate fluently. So let's talk about the actions that we have here. So here, you're really just trying to get as much input as possible with the goal of destroying doubt. All right, so that's really the goal of this. Like when we talk about fluency, fluency really means you understand the language well enough to use it without worrying about grammar rules or translations, or you're worrying about making pronunciation mistakes or anything like that. So you're worrying about input. You want to get as much input until you can understand something where you have no doubt about that thing. So we want input. So doubt destruction, D-E-S-T-R-U-C, excuse me, T-I-O-N. So doubt destruction, and we really want to understand something well enough to use it fluently, all right? So in the case of my wife, that example I gave before about sleepover and oversleep, when a non-native speaker or someone who is just learning English as a second language, typically they will think about that as, okay, I'm trying to learn these words. I know what sleep means. I know what over means. And oh no, I don't remember what order they go in. So that's a problem you get from learning this way. It's confusing rules where you're trying to study rules and memorize vocabulary. But when you actually understand something like a native, you really feel confident. This is learning English as a first language. Again, over here, you're trying to learn as much as you can to eliminate the doubts that stop you from speaking, okay? So the thing that, like, when people think that speech triggers fluency over here, they try to speak, but they don't really know what they're saying. They don't really feel very confident about it. They're still feeling kind of nervous. So of course they're going to be stuck in this cycle over here. But with this way, even if you don't speak, you're really just getting lots of examples, just like I gave at the beginning of this video, the difference between understanding sleep over and oversleep. And when you just learn both of those through a translation, it's going to stop you from understanding them very well. You won't feel very confident. You might think, oh no, I'm in the conversation. Is it sleep over or oversleep? I don't remember which one it is. And you just try saying one and maybe you will be correct, maybe you are not. But the people who really know what they're talking about, they understand the language very well because they don't have any doubt about what they're saying. And so the beautiful thing about this process is this one over here, you think you have to speak, and so you spend a lot of time trying to speak or worrying about, are you getting enough speaking practice? But over here, you're not worrying about speaking at all. I haven't said anything about trying to speak. All we're trying to do is get lots of examples until we really feel confident and comfortable about something, then we speak, okay? So this part here, all the actions we're doing, it's actually developing fluency, meaning we're understanding the language very well before we say anything, okay? So that's why fluency actually develops speech. And you can learn comfortably as you just get lots of good examples, and you don't have to say anything. So at the beginning of this video, again, I gave you a very simple example, a story with a few examples about the difference between sleep over and oversleep. And because you got that example, you should feel more confident now about saying sleep over, like I'm staying over at someone's house, or I'm oversleeping, where I should get up at 7 o'clock, but I got up at 8 o'clock instead. So I slept too long. I overslept. I'll add one more thing right here, which is another common thing people say in a similar situation, that is to sleep in. So to sleep in is like you're intentionally staying in bed. You're sleeping in, like you're sleeping longer because you don't want to wake up, okay? So maybe on a weekend, you don't have work or you don't have anything to do. Usually you get up early, like 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever time you get up. But maybe 1 or 2 days a week, you like to sleep in. So you're actually staying in bed for longer. You're sleeping in, okay? So in this case, sleeping in is something you want to do, But when you oversleep, it's typically something you don't want to do. All right. Just like you don't want to overthink or overdo something or overeat, you're doing those things too much or more than you should. Okay. So hopefully this makes sense where we're talking about, and again, just the belief that people have about this. If you remember just one thing from all of the videos I have or all the lessons, just remember this one idea here. It will change everything about how you learn and how you speak. And instead of having this cycle where you keep learning more, you keep trying to speak, but you never really feel more fluent, instead, we actually have a process like a kind of staircase here where you really feel you're making progress. So we're not trying to stay in this cycle over here where we're, oh no, I still feel nervous. I know I have to speak, but I'm too nervous. I don't want to speak, but I have to force myself to speak. Instead of staying in this, if you change the way you think, it changes the way you act, and that will change the results you get with your learning, okay? So here, like today, we're just covering one thing, like sleeping over versus oversleeping. And even just these two different things, we're also getting more examples like oversleep or to overdo or to overthink or to overplay or to anything like that. And you start thinking, oh, like I understand something as a first language without thinking through my native language. You're not using any translations. And so you actually feel yourself making progress because you understood something better. And because you understood something better, now you start speaking. So the result here becomes speech, all right? Here, we're trying to speak as like the action that makes us get fluent. But even in a conversation, you don't become more fluent by speaking, by using the vocabulary you know. You actually become more fluent as you listen to other people talking to you in that conversation. And especially if that person is a better speaker or they use vocabulary that you're not familiar with, but you actually learn something new. It's the learning process. Those aha moments are what raise you up to the next level with your learning. Okay, so they actually make you more fluent and you can feel them happening when it's happening. Over here, you really just have hope. Okay, but here we have proof because we can actually feel ourselves improving while it's happening. Each time you understand something better, when you get that aha moment, you feel like, oh, so that's what that means. All right, so now you actually understand it, but you understand it as a first language, just like a native speaker does. So you're actually learning the same way a native does, and that's what it means to learn English as a first language. You're not using another language, you're understanding the language all in English, rather than, again, trying to use some kind of translation or me explaining some rules or something like that. I'm just giving you a very simple story that helps you understand the language like a native, okay? Does this make sense? Hopefully it does, because when I understood this is when I finally started getting fluent in Japanese after I had failed for 15 years to learn 4 different languages. So I spent a year living in Japan and still not being able to speak because I believed this. I would try to say something, but really I was not feeling very comfortable speaking because I didn't think I was saying things correctly. I think my pronunciation is bad, or I'm not using the right word, or maybe the grammar is incorrect, or I could remember something when I'm reading it in a textbook, but when it came to the conversation, I would forget what I was learning, okay? And so again, because I believe that, I would try to speak, and I would be hoping all the time that I became a better speaker, but I never felt like I was really improving. But here, you actually feel your improvement. So the story I told you earlier, if that helped you improve, that's the actual proof you have that you understand something better. Okay? Hopefully, does that make sense? Let me know. Click the like button or just post a comment. Let me know if what I'm explaining is making sense. I really want to make sure people understand this idea. I talk about like ESL versus EFL or learning English as a first language a lot, but I wanted to just compare these 3 pieces of it. So you've got the belief, the actions that you take because of that belief, and these are the results you get. So if you are in this situation down here, it's because you're trying to do these things because you believe this. But if you actually feel progress, it's because you're destroying the doubt that stops you from speaking, and you destroy that doubt for individual words and phrases. Maybe you understand sleep over and oversleep better now, but there are probably lots of other words you still don't know, and that's fine. So we actually get fluent in individual words and phrases as we understand them better. So what happened for me, like I discovered this when I was at a park not far from where I'm recording this right now. So here in Japan, and I was thinking about why I was struggling to speak. But when I went to a park and saw some kids talking with their parents, it finally made sense to me. The children are not being forced to speak. They're actually getting lots of input, and that input is destroying the doubts that kids have about using things. So when you hear from your mother and your father and your friends and your teachers and television and books, all these different things are teaching you the language. So fluency it's like something that other people outside are doing to you. Okay? So over here, you think that you learn something, and then it's like fluency is something you have to do, where you have to try to practice it. And of course, it is possible to try to get fluent by yourself, but it's just more difficult because really what you're doing is trying to get more input and destroy the doubt that stops you from speaking. Okay? But once you understand how that works, hopefully that should make sense. All right? So I say like make sense all the time, but I really want this idea to be understandable. But if you remember only one thing from this video, remember this. Or you remember only one thing I teach you, just apply this idea. Really think about that for a moment. Because it sounds backwards. Obviously, I mean, it's the exact opposite idea here. It sounds stupid or silly. It's like, of course you have to speak to become fluent. But remember, even in a conversation, when you're speaking with someone else, if I just repeat things, so it doesn't matter if I'm speaking with someone or I'm speaking to myself, talking in my mind, whatever. If I'm just repeating things to myself, I'm not improving more because I'm not understanding the language better. I'm just saying something I already know. But when I actually learn something new or understand some vocabulary more deeply, I get that aha moment, that moment of understanding where I think, now I'm really understanding why people say this, okay? So when people don't know a word before, and then they hear a good example of it that really makes it clear for them, they actually feel that improvement and they move to the next level, okay? So when you're in a conversation, again, when I ask people, what is it about a conversation that you think you need? Why do you need to speak with people? And often I don't get a clear answer from people, but what's really happening in a conversation is you are saying things you know already or that you feel pretty confident about. But most of the improvement will come from the other person if they are a better speaker than you. Now, if you're speaking with someone who is a worse speaker or they don't really know the language very well and they just don't communicate very much, then you are not going to make much improvement for that conversation. So you don't actually have to speak in order to get that improvement as long as you keep getting the input to destroy the doubt, all right? And I talk on this channel about like understandable messages or comprehensible input, but really the goal is to get the input, to get enough examples of something until you destroy the doubt. That's the doubt here is that's what really stops people from speaking. So they know something a little bit, but they still, it's like there's like a little voice in the back of their head that says, am I using this correctly? Am I saying this? Is the pronunciation correct? There's always some kind of doubt there, but once you destroy that doubt, then you feel confident, okay? So hopefully you understand now, fluency is something you can develop before you speak, and then you feel confident expressing yourself, okay? All right, let me go back and check chat. If people have questions about this or anything else, I'm happy to answer those. Where did I leave off before? I think... Oh, well, let me just come back to Muhammad's question right quick. I want to reiterate this, to say this one again. So when I talk with my mother tongue, the sentences automatically generate on both my mind and tongue. So the question is, how can I do the same thing with English? And hopefully I've answered that question. So when you learn English like it is your mother tongue, that's when you use it like it is your mother tongue. Okay, so if you learn English as a first language, the reason people speak their first language well is because they're doing all of these things. They spend a lot more time getting input that destroys doubt, And that's when they feel confident using something. So the first time, even in your native language, maybe you learn some new phrase or some new thing happens on the news, whatever, you probably don't feel very confident about saying it. But if you get many more examples of that, when you really do understand it well, you finally feel confident about using it, okay? So this is the same thing that happens. It doesn't matter what the language is, if it's your like the language you were learning since you were a child or a new language you're learning. The difference is just how you learn it. So there's nothing difficult about English or learning Chinese or Spanish or whatever the language is, but you make it much more difficult if you learn it as a second language rather than learning it as a first language. So the belief you have changes the actions you take, and that gives you the results that come from learning that way. So if you are feeling stuck, like you keep learning more but you're not becoming more fluent, it's because you believe this. So the good news is you don't have to speak to become fluent. Fluency just means you understand something better. And then you can start using it as you feel more confident. Obviously, the goal is to be able to speak. We want to get there, but when most people have chances to speak, but they don't feel confident about speaking, you should probably stop doing this and start doing this. Okay? All right. Now, if you have an argument against that, let me know. I'd like to hear that. But this is, again, how I became fluent finally in Japanese, and I continue to get fluent today, and this is why I've been teaching this idea over here for 20 years. All right. I think I answered that one. Let's go through again. And all right, Hossam. Oh, I think I read that one already from Morocco. And Flavia, you're an amazing teacher. Thanks. Okay, I read that one already. Sergio, good evening, teacher. You are beautiful. Thanks for your classroom. It's my pleasure. Mariah says, hi, I'm new. I like your videos. Glad to hear it. Ethan says, my partner wants to buy an ESL dictionary. Well, an ESL dictionary would just be a regular English dictionary where you're not trying to learn like English to Spanish or anything else. So you don't even need to buy a dictionary. You can just get a regular online dictionary and use that. But if you want a regular dictionary, it's just an English dictionary. So it's not like a language learner's dictionary. Although I might recommend using a dictionary for kids. So an English speaker's dictionary for children, because that's a little bit easier and maybe it will have simpler explanations of things. It might not be like a thick dictionary, but that's a good thing to learn. So I have one of those. It's actually a children's picture dictionary for learning Japanese. I don't really use it very often, but again, that was when I was first starting to understand the language and I wanted to understand it in Japanese. So trying to learn Japanese as a first language rather than English as a first language, that's what I used. So just look for an English to English dictionary. Denny says, greetings from the middle of the world, Ecuador, hello. And George says, hi, Andrew. I understand very clear your speech. I'm from Mexico, living in Chicago. Thank you for teaching me people how to be fluent. It's my pleasure. You would say for teaching people how to be fluent. Sergio says, I love you. Your hands are big, and I love that. Actually, my hands aren't that big, I guess comparatively, but welcome. Okay, good morning. That's it, Teacher Drew. It's hot every day, isn't it? Yes, it is quite hot over here in Nagasaki, so I'm glad to be inside with some air conditioning blowing on me. It's like 22 degrees or 23 degrees right now, which is nice. Heartbeat says, you are doing an amazing job now, but spellings do matter as well. I would suggest that you focus on spellings while putting it on the board. Yes, it is obviously a good idea to spell things correctly. And my writing is a little bit sloppy because I'm trying to do it very quickly and make sure I'm not wasting time. But I do try to say what I'm writing as I write it up here. So Jack Smith says, good morning, Drew. The comprehensible inputs are the most important to master a language, right? Thanks. Yes. And like people forget the point of comprehensible input is to destroy the doubts that stop you from speaking. So I remember getting an email from a teacher in the UK, I think. So this is an English teacher, a native speaker that was asking me questions about this. And they were saying, well, how much comprehensible input do you need? And I just said, oh, well, until you understand something. The point is like you don't just get infinite comprehensible input. You want to think about a specific word or phrase and then get examples of that until you feel you really understand that thing. And then when you feel confident that you're going to say it correctly, then you move on to the next thing. So the point is not just like only input. The point is really, why do we get the input? The point is to destroy the doubt that stops you from speaking. Oh no, where did we live off? Let's see. And Heartbeat says, yes, I'm a language trainer as well. I always have this back of mind to avoid errors and being pointed out. Yeah, and it's like, especially me, when I do notice I wrote something incorrectly or whatever, like I feel bad about that. Obviously you want to give people correct answers, but yeah, you want to make sure, like as a teacher, you're giving people good examples. All right, Keiko says, overthinker, is it a positive word? I'm not sure. Typically, it's also one word, like to overthink, or when someone is an overthinker. Typically, when people are doing something over, like they're doing it too much, then that would be a negative thing. So someone who thinks too much, someone who is generally an overthinker, or they overthink things, that means it would be a negative thing. All right, Flavia says, makes a lot of sense. Glad to hear it. Ethan with a smiley face over there. Sarah, looks like a flower. Thank you for your advice, teacher. Glad to hear it. Lewis says, great illustration. Luciano, hi, everyone. Elder, hi there. Drew. Lewis, one of the best English YouTube English channel. Thanks for sharing the knowledge. It's my pleasure. Abdullah says, are there another series of phrase builder lessons that you made a few years ago? Well, we have in Fluent for Life. We have every phrase builder video is in there. So that's like, I don't know how many, like thousands of words and phrases that is, but people in Fluent for Life, they have access to all of those. So I think we only have like in the Native Fluency Blueprint. So that's a program we offer. People get one of those, but you get all of them. There are like 7 of them, 5 or 6. I don't remember exactly how many there are. There are a lot. I think I made like so many of them, but they're all connected with the lesson sets in Fluent for Life. So if you enjoy this, the things that we do in Fluent for Life, you can click on the link in the description below to learn how to do this. But again, the really great thing about EFL is that like other people can get you fluent. Okay, so that's how I can guarantee what I do, because I'm the one controlling whether you understand something or not. I can make something very easy to understand. You feel more confident about it. You understand it easily. You remember it. So you start speaking. But if I make something confusing, if I'm teaching badly, or I don't actually teach you anything, I just give you some translations, and then you have to try to practice and learn and understand things by yourself, then that's what's going to get you stuck over here. So again, the nice thing about this, you become fluent first and then you start speaking. So if you'd like to get fluent comfortably, actually have me just make the language understandable along with lots of native examples. That's what we do in Fluent for Life, and all of those phrase builder videos are included in that. You can click on the link in the description below this video to learn more. Alexander says, from the Philippines, okay, nice to see you there. Abdul says, I would mean you, teacher, make more videos about phrases improvement. Well, it's already done. We have all that finished. So like most of the videos that I do on YouTube is welcoming new people, trying to get them to understand this idea, because if you understand this idea, then you can become a fluent speaker very quickly. But if you don't understand this idea, and most people do not, so right now you know more than 99% of people learning any language, really, because most people are going to tell you this. If you ask your friends, you say, hey, how would you get fluent in another language? And they would probably say, well, you go to school and you learn and you try to speak as much as possible. But that's like those memes you see where like it will be like step 1 is learn. Step 2 is like speak, and then step 3 is like you don't really know what it is, and then step 4 is like fluency, because you don't actually, there is no actual way that you become fluent that you could explain easily with this method. So when you say like, okay, you should speak to get fluent, what does that mean? How exactly should I speak to get fluent? I should just repeat the same thing again and again? What exactly should I do? Because I'm not actually becoming more confident as I repeat something. So I could learn a word if I gave you 2 lessons here. So one lesson was just here's the word sleepover, and we're going to repeat that again and again. Here's a translation of it. Then maybe you think, okay, I got sleepover, but I also heard this other term, oversleep. And now my mind is confused because I don't know which of those I should say, and that's what happened to my wife. So in that situation, she said, I'm sorry, I slept over, rather than I'm sorry, I overslept. Okay? So again, Diana says, I'm at stage 3 over here. If you're talking about this, like if you're in this situation, don't feel bad about that. It's not your fault. This is just the advice that everybody gives about language learning. The important thing is that all you have to do first is to change the way you think. If you change the way you think, you will automatically change all the actions and the result will improve very quickly. Okay? So this is exactly what happened to me. I was learning this way for 15 years. And basically hoping the whole time, I was just hoping I would get fluent because I didn't know exactly how fluency worked. But now it's like very scientific, very easy to understand how it works. You can actually feel it happening when you learn something and understand something better, and you know it in a conversation. Okay? All right, let's see here. Hopefully that makes sense, though. Again, the point is we really want to understand something very well, and you don't need to speak to do that. You just need to get lots of good examples that really make sure, okay, I actually understand what I'm learning now. Let's see. Ram says, from Nepal, says, English speakers are not found in my daily life, yet want to develop my speaking skills. What can I do? So right now, you're not speaking with me. You can type something, sure, but you're not actually speaking with me, and we are not in the same place, but I can still get you more fluent by helping you understand the language. And that's why it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much you try to learn or how many words you learn. If you don't really understand the vocabulary, you're not going to use it fluently. Okay? So even if you are living by yourself up on a mountain somewhere, if you have access to the internet, you can get lots of examples that really help you understand the language very well. Okay, so I give examples of that in pretty much every video, and then Fluent for Life, that's the whole program where we actually take people step by step and help them understand the language like a native. Okay, so we teach English as a first language, and we basically take you through this process here. We destroy the doubt that stops you from speaking, and you can actually feel your progress. So again, you don't have to speak. It doesn't matter if you have people to speak with or not. The whole point is you should be understanding the language better. And we know this because there are lots of people who live in English-speaking countries and they try to speak every day, but they still don't feel more confident. Or they basically stay at the same level. They say the same kinds of things over and over and over again. They never really feel like they're becoming better. Okay? So you don't have to spend more time speaking. You need to spend more time understanding the language better. All right, Flappy says, please, let's hit the like button to help the channel. Yes, I always appreciate that. Thank you very much. Teacher says, okay, go. Well, oh, no. Second, you should say, oh, go man. Yeah. All right, well, I guess you got to go to work or whatever. Let me know what you do. What do you do exactly? Pedro says, very nice tips. Glad to hear it. Miro says, thanks for all your efforts. Pedro, talk more in specific about your course. What is the advice? Or there are courses to that one. Cost $29 US. So if you're talking about the native fluency blueprint, I'm going to erase all this so I can give kind of like a more detailed explanation of this. So most of the people who visit our page or find our YouTube videos or whatever, they are that first kind of learner where they understand a lot of the language, but they don't speak very well. So what we try to do for these learners, number one, we want to give people quick wins. So a quick win, Q-U-I-C-K. So I want to show you, first of all, that it actually is quick to improve. And I do that by helping you by basically improving the way you speak with the vocabulary you already know. So most people, they think like, let's say they have a vocabulary. I don't know, let's imagine this is a vocabulary of 10 words. Most learners, they think they can't speak very well. So what they should do is try to learn more. So they keep trying to learn more words, but they never really feel more fluent. Instead, you should actually learn to use the vocabulary you already know. If you can, I'm trying to draw this in an understandable way, but instead of knowing these words a little bit, like the example I gave before about sleepover, if you really understand them well enough, if you have no doubt about these words, then you will start using them fluently. And what I do in the Native Fluency Blueprint, the whole point is to give you these quick wins. I'm basically teaching native communication techniques, so the same things that natives are doing for pronunciation or how to change topics in conversations. Maybe you forget a word and you start using something else. I call this moving like water. So I really want to show you how to improve very quickly so you can do like in the same day. So you can join the program and go through the lessons and actually learn a lot. So you learn a lot of vocabulary as well, but the program also shows you how to improve without learning more words or grammar. So that's the point of the Native Fluency Blueprint. But Fluent for Life is for people who really want like guaranteed fluency. And again, just one more contrast between these two things. So the Native Fluency Blueprint is going to tell you what to do, and you can just apply those things in your communication or in your learning. So how to pronounce things better, how to switch topics without thinking about it, so how to have smoother speech, those kinds of things. That's what we teach there. But Fluent for Life is for people who want me to actually destroy the doubts for them and get them fluent. Okay, so it's two different programs, although both of these are included in Fluent for Life. So for people who have Fluent for Life, they have like all of these lessons here, but they also have the step-by-step training that destroys the doubts that stop you from speaking. And as you go through the program, that's how I can guarantee your success, because I'm the one making sure you get fluent. And if you have any questions, you can ask, but most people they like sit back and get fluent the lazy way, because it's just making sure you understand the language very well. So most people, they often join the program, they already know a lot of vocabulary, but they just don't know it very well. So they don't really feel very confident, just like I gave the example before about my wife. So she knows the word sleep over, and she knows also like oversleep. But if she understands those like a native, she really understands like how to break these words apart, how to use them in different ways, and she can say like, oh, I understand like what does over mean in sleepover. So if I ask a native, they will easily tell me like, oh, that means you're over at someone's house. You're like staying over. Sometimes we will stay there like, oh, I'm staying over at my friend's house. So I can say kind of conversationally to stay over. So I'm staying over at my friend's house tonight, okay? Or I'm sleeping over at my friend's house tonight. And natives understand the difference here. Like it's like sleeping over. Like I'm not like on top of something. I'm away. There's a distance there. So that's what over in this case means. But to oversleep means you're doing something too much. All right. And so here I'm spending more time making the language understandable, so you really understand like what does stay over mean, sleep over, oversleep, and you actually understand all of these words better because I've given you this explanation. Okay? So you're not speaking right now, you're not speaking, I'm getting you fluent. Okay? So a good teacher actually knows how to make the language understandable so you get fluent automatically. And that's why I guarantee what I do, because I'm the one getting you fluent. A regular teacher will just say, hey, here's some translations, here's a vocabulary list, I want you to go learn that, and then it's on you. Either you learn it or you don't get fluent. All right? But for me, like I'm here to get you fluent. That's what I do. Okay? So I like to do that. I like to see that like I can't see your face, but often I can tell when people understand something better and they're like, like a little light bulb goes on over your head, or you finally understand something better, and there you go. So you actually understand the language better. And this is how you can improve, and we show you different ways to do that. So if you want like quick wins, you want to speak better today without learning any more words or grammar, you just want to, because you already know. So the people who join the Native Fluency Blueprint, I'll just put NFB up here. So the Native Fluency Blueprint, you can find this at our website as well, but that's what the Native Fluency Blueprint is. It's the whole point of it is to give you ways of just showing you that you can improve very quickly and even without learning more words or grammar. Okay, so with with Fluent for Life, I'll put FL here, and you can learn more about this by clicking on the link in the description. But Fluent for Life, the point of that program is to actually for me to get you fluent. So NFB, the Native Fluency Blueprint, is more for independent learners, although there is lots of vocabulary there too. So once you understand you should be learning like a native, you'll see lots of native vocabulary examples like I do like in this video here. So like over 700 of them, I think. But you learn lots of native phrases and you remember them because you understand them like a native. That's the whole point of understanding the vocabulary that way, rather than learning it as a second language. But Fluent for Life covers everything, and you get to choose what you learn. So there are 100 lesson sets covering lots of different topics, lots of different speakers, over 13,000 words and expressions, I think, but you choose what you learn. So I don't expect you to like sit and learn all of that, but you get to choose. So if you want to learn more professional vocabulary or stuff for everyday communication, whatever, or you want to solve, particular grammar issues, there's grammar that's causing you trouble, we help you solve all that. So it's all done for you. We take care of it for you. All you do is just choose what you want and we get you fluent in that. All right. But hopefully you understand now, in the same way that parents get children fluent. So children aren't studying by themselves. They're not reading textbooks or looking at flashcards or trying to, like study grammar tables or something. Like children are not doing that to learn. What they are doing is they're getting lots of input. They're getting lots of varied examples from other people. So other people are getting children fluent. And then when children feel confident that they understand something, then they speak. Okay, so that's what we do. So the point is not, obviously we show you how to meet native speakers as well, because a lot of people want to do that. But it's a lot more fun to meet natives or to start speaking if you feel confident about the language first. Right. Let's see. And Luciano says, what about restart the learning process throughout the Bible, for example, which comes with a completely different vocabulary? Luciano, I don't quite understand the question. What do you mean? What about restart the learning process throughout the Bible, for example, which comes with a completely different vocabulary? Well, if you're learning something like imagine I start a job. I guess it's a similar example. So if I start a job working for an airline design company, I have to learn lots of words about airplane parts, I guess. And in that case, it's like learning a new language, and I just have to get examples of what things are and maybe see the parts, and it's like, oh, okay, this is what an engine looks like, or these are different pieces of the engine. And so if that's what you mean, you would probably get examples like that, or like the dictionary example from before, you would use maybe a children's Bible if you want to learn with the Bible and try to learn the language that way. But again, if I'm trying to learn a new language, I would probably not choose the Bible because it's probably going to be a bit more difficult, and maybe it would have a lot of unfamiliar vocabulary that maybe isn't so useful for me. But it depends on your life. If that's important to you, then you can try using that. It just might be a little bit more difficult for you. All right. And Pato says, hello, Drew. And Detreklin says, sir, maybe most of us catch what a teacher's saying because the teacher is teaching. It would be different, and we listen to a podcast or film. Then comes the problem. Yes. And so in the example I gave before, I didn't want to spend too much time talking about that, but most people are getting lots of examples of what I call textbook English. And it's correct English, but it's often not the way people would regularly speak in a real conversation. So the way I'm speaking right now is different than how people would speak in a movie, okay? Especially a character who's not very clear, or they're speaking with a difficult accent, or they're using vocabulary that you just don't know. So obviously it's a completely different situation. So in Fluent for Life, we teach you that vocabulary. Okay, we make it understandable. We show you how to learn that vocabulary, and we get you fluent in that vocabulary. Showtime says, thank you for your offer. You are an amazing teacher. Glad to hear it. Wellington says, why does he talk so fast? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm not talking that quickly, but most people can understand the speed of my speaking, even if it's a little bit faster because I'm speaking clearly. Bobby says, I'm looking forward for a live session where you explain a specific word. You've done a few, such as run, get, etc. I find the specific focus on one word build my comprehension faster. Yes. So Bayou understands, again, this is what we do in Fluent for Life. So we focus on things like that. Like you have a whole lesson set that's dedicated to specific vocabulary and helping you understand things in that way. So we do have lots of videos on the YouTube channel that focus on vocabulary as well, but we take you through all the steps in Fluent for Life. And Nathaniel says, EXO from Panama, your lessons are awesome, glad to hear it. Bona says, hi. Bridget says, hi, Teacher Drew. And Diana, oh, I think I read that one already. Let's see. Heartbeat says, the speech rate is perfect. Yes, so like it depends on the speaker. If your English level is lower, then even if I speak slowly, it won't help so much. But typically the people who watch my channel, they understand quite a bit, but you'll notice I'm not using a lot of difficult vocabulary. I should do that and take my, 10 most recent videos, take the transcript and put that just through a vocabulary filter and tell me what vocabulary I'm using. But it should be fairly low level. Pata says, Drew, is it possible that when we get fluent, we think we are not translating, but really deep in our brain we are, but everything happens so quickly that we don't realize we are doing it? There could be some of that. So some people who are really good students, they really just put a lot of pressure on themselves to try to translate something as quickly as possible. But often what happens is when you stop trying to learn through your native language, then you're actually not learning through a translation. And so this happens to me a lot. Like I know many words in Japanese that I don't know the names of that, or I don't know the word for that in English, like the names of flowers, for example. So it's like I'll learn like, what's a word? I'm trying to think of like a flower or plant name or something. It doesn't matter, but the point is I will learn like like tsubaki. So that like I know what that is. Tsubaki is a kind of flower, like a kind of plant, but I don't know the English word for that. So in this case, like people typically they have like whatever their native language is, and then they're trying to learn what you would call like the second language over here. And so they're thinking, and they're like you're mentioning, trying to process this very quickly, where like, okay, I'm thinking very quickly, here's the native word, I'm going to translate it into that second language over here. But I'm suggesting you break this over here by connecting directly with the other language. And it's easy to do that as I'm giving you examples of that in all of my videos, but that's what it means to learn something as a first language. So this language over here, what we call your native language, it just, like this language could also become a native language for you too. It's just how you learn it. So you learn this language as a first language, not just because it was the first one you learned, like you were a baby and it was the first one you learned. It's like the only, you couldn't learn it as a second language because you can't use a translation to learn your first language. The only thing you can do is just to understand that language in that language. And that's why parents are giving you lots of input to try to make sure you understand something. So if I give you, like I could teach you some Japanese and like actually teach you Japanese in Japanese and help you understand Japanese that way. Like let's say I'll give you, like if I'm a parent and you are my child and we see, let's see. So this is not a good picture, but we see this and I say, tori, tori, tori. And at first you're like, okay, well, maybe that means bird. You don't really know for sure what that means. But then like we see, like, tori, tori, tori. So if I draw both of these for you, we see all these, we start seeing like here's a different tori. This is a bad picture, but also tori. And so I'm not like here, you don't know if you see this one example and I say tori, you don't know if I'm talking about the name of this kind of thing, like the name of what kind of bird it is, or if I mean bird in general. But if I give you like tori, 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 then you think, okay, like tori means bird. And what I'm doing, I call this naturally varied review. And it's how your parents taught you your native language. But it's only your native language because they couldn't use any translations to teach you. They had to teach you in this way to make the language understandable. So you're not speaking, like nobody is forcing you to speak. Your parents are not standing you in front of a classroom and telling you to speak. They're saying, oh, look, like they're just telling you what something means. And as you get lots of examples, then it becomes clear. But as soon as I change this, like now I explain to you all like, tori, kore mo ne, kore wa tori, tori, kore, kore, kore. This. So if I start using more of the language, you will start to understand more. But I have to make it understandable, and usually you get lots of examples. 例えばこれはスズメかな。スズメ、袋、スズメ、袋、和紙かな。和紙ね。So now, like, I'm telling you a different word as I point to these things, and you're like, oh, maybe that means like a different kind of bird or something. And your brain is trying to figure this out. It's like a puzzle. But I can't use a translation because you don't know anything else. I can't use Chinese to teach English to my 2-year-old child because they don't know Chinese either. Okay? So suzume, like sparrow, fukuro, owl, washi, eagle. You know, and this is a really bad picture. Particularly bad, and maybe that looks like an owl, maybe that looks like, I don't know, a baby, I don't know, chick or something, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, the point is when you're learning a language in this way, you don't think about translating because your brain is like, ooh, look, a puzzle. I can try to figure this out. And then you start, as you hear this, you think, oh, now I know the Japanese word for bird, which is tori. Tori, tori, tori. Okay? And as you learn the language this way, you naturally stop translating because your brain isn't trying to translate. You learned it as a first language. You learned it directly. Okay? So hopefully it's clear that we really don't have a native language. We just have languages that we learn directly and languages that we learn through other languages. Okay? So that's why we call it English as a second language because it's like not your first language. You're learning it through another language. And not only is the translation a problem, you're also trying to just like study a list of words or trying to understand rules logically instead of seeing examples of them. Okay, but this is how it works. So you're not trying to like translate things really quickly. You actually feel that you understand it the same way a native does, because this word tori, to your mind, it's just another word. You don't have like a separate category in your mind for like Japanese words and English words. So you could have a word in English like tsunami. Tsunami. So tsunami, like a giant wave, tsunami. So now this is an English word, but it's from Japanese. Okay, but little kids, they learn the word tsunami from their parents, or they hear it, or somebody is like they see a person surfing, or they watch the news and they hear that word. They just think it's English because they're not learning. They don't make a connection in their mind. They don't separate English word versus like Japanese word. It's only later that they understand, oh, like interesting. English is a language that it's a mix of other different languages. We have some German words and French words and Japanese words, other things like that. So as you get older, you understand that. But when you're young and you don't know, it's just another sound. You're connecting a sound with a situation. So that's how you learn something as a first language, and there's no need to translate anything. That's kind of a long explanation, but hopefully this makes sense, all right? Ideally, you're understanding the language really well as you get more examples. the first time you hear something, it's not going to be 100% understandable. But if I keep giving you more examples of something, I'll give you one more example of this just to make sure this point is clear. And we can imagine this as like an alien language. Other people who have been followers of the channel for a while, they've probably seen these kinds of examples before. But let's say let's see. So I'm going to give you like a flashcard. You imagine just kind of one example from something here. And I'm going to tell you a word that is not English. This is not English. Let's see, we're going to call this dep. Dep. So this is our word over here, dep. Now, what is a dep? I've given you one example. I've drawn a picture, and I've given you a sound for that picture. All right? What do you think dep means? Any idea? What do you think dep means? No idea? You guys are pretty slow today. Dep. So imagine you're learning like a foreign language as a first language, car, and we hear a word like this, or we hear like a fire truck, an ambulance or something. So maybe you think a dep is a car, all right? And maybe it is, maybe it's not. So vehicle is another example. Does your bird wake up early? Does your bird wake up early? Does your bird wake up early? And here we are. So again, I'll draw another one. So remember, when you're learning a native, like a language as a first language, the first time you hear it, you might not understand it perfectly because it's not really clear what I'm talking about. I could be, maybe it means car, maybe it means vehicle, maybe it means something else. Dep. Dep. Now that changes things, doesn't it? It's like we have a target and your brain is trying to get ding, 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 ding. We want to get right here where we really feel confident that we understand what a word means. Dep. What do you think we're talking about? Dep. Dep. Well, we got boat, ship. George says transport. Dep. So now we have 4 different examples of dep. So we've got this, and this. So probably, like the word dep probably does not mean car because these are not cars. And so vehicle is like any kind of transport, or it could be a model, something like that. Yeah, like even my pictures are not perfect. Like if I'm doing this for real, I would show you like good quality pictures or something. Truck plus educate. So dep, it means like, some kind of transport in some way. So a transport could be a car, it could be a boat, it could be a truck, it could be a person carrying something. So dep here, it would mean transport. But the point is, you don't know that usually the first time you hear a word. And that's why it's so important to keep getting more examples until you really feel like you understand something well. All right. So this is one example of understanding vocabulary really well. All right. But another one is maybe hearing the same word from different speakers. So you hear like an old woman say the word like dip, and you're like, what did you say? And she said dip, and like a man with a deep voice like dip, 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 And you hear that, you're like, what did that person say? And so as you get all of these different examples of other people saying the word, now you're feeling much more confident about listening to that, the pronunciation of the word, because you're hearing all these different examples. But when a teacher says dep and very clearly pronounces it, says dep means this, and they're just giving you a translation of it, you're not really learning anything, and you're not really well prepared for how other people will say the word in real conversations. Or maybe they say something different. Maybe we have a different word for this, all right? But hopefully this makes it clear that when you're learning something as a first language, you're actually understanding it over time as you get it. So a ride, like that could be another example. So here, like it's still not perfectly clear what I'm talking about. Like here, it's like a person carrying something. You're not really riding anything in this example. I mean, you could ride in a car or a boat or a truck, but like as we get more examples, then the mind is finally hitting that target, that aha moment of, okay, I understand what the person is saying. All right. So don't feel bad if most of the language lessons you get when you learned a language in school, you get one example of something with a translation. So of course it's going to be more difficult for you to communicate. You don't really understand what you're learning very well. But as you get more examples in English, you really start to understand it as a first language. And even if you don't speak, just by understanding better, you will feel more confident about speaking. Okay? So the understanding comes first, fluency comes before you speak, all right? You can become fluent in a language and never say a word, all right? Isn't that interesting? You can actually become fluent in a language and not say a word because you're just understanding something better. Maybe some people who, like, they don't have a mouth or their mouth is broken or, they're unable to speak. Maybe they could write or something, I guess. But somebody could still understand the language and become fluent in something even if they can't speak, okay? Hopefully, people are getting this idea, but that's how you do it. And so the more you learn English as a first language, the less you translate. So learn more in English and learn less through your native language. That's why we learn English as a first language. All right, where did I leave off here? Oh, okay, that one I think. And Avalon says, that's right. You can't speak about what you've never listened to and never understood the meaning of. I believe that writing down as much as possible will exponentially improve a student's skills. Yes, certainly writing is another good form of output. So speech is fine. I'm not telling you not to speak. You can speak if you like. But the important thing here is that we really want to understand. That's the most important thing. Because if you don't destroy the doubt, then you won't become a confident speaker. All right, let's see. Safwathala says, what should we do for writing? Read correctly spellings, please answer my question. Well, if you're talking about improving your writing, I would just get more examples and write those down. That's how you do it. So find correct examples and write them down. If you're talking about improving writing. Diana says, one time I said that I would like to be a good speaker. I will need to choose a topic about that. For example, choosing any topic. Were you talking about some topic or signature? Well, in general, if you want to learn something, it's very easy to learn a language within a topic you're interested in. So if I like vehicles or I like animals or I like cooking or whatever, dramas or whatever I'm interested in, I can find examples of that and that information will teach me the language also. Because I can, like if I watch a video for kids about how to draw pictures, that's going to use some of the language and it's going to show me, like, draw this line and now move the pencil over here and draw this other line. And it's much easier to understand what something means in that way. So if you want to learn what you're interested in, go ahead. Like, this is what we do in Fluent for Life. People get to choose the lesson sets they're interested in and follow those. Let's see. And Shank says, good morning, or morning, Drew. Thank you for the great lesson. I love your way of looking at things in the world. I am wondering how to maintain coherence when speaking, such as explaining a concept logically. That's a good question. It's not really related to fluency so much, but more like If you have a good plan for what you want and you understand that thing really well, then it's much easier. So if you're going to give a presentation like this, usually I have, some idea of how I want to structure a video where I'm explaining something. So it's the same idea, and I want to make sure people understand me at every step. So another thing you could do is test out a presentation on other people, or if you're trying to explain something logically that anyone would be able to follow that. Let's see, Bridget says, Drew, when you become fluent, do you stay fluent? Typically, yeah. I mean, if you understand something, you might maybe not use some words. So me, I will forget some English words sometimes. I don't know if that's because I'm getting older or, I don't use them as much. So I use some Japanese and some English, but if I'm not thinking about some words, I will think, what is that word? I can't remember that word. But my fluency is really my ability to communicate without thinking. And so if I forget a specific word, I can easily shift to something else. I can use a different word or expression instead. Heartbeat again, I would suggest if people learn root words to develop vocabularies, it's an easy way to know more vocabularies. Yes, so like understanding prefixes and suffixes or root words, that's a good way to understand kind of the story of a word. And we talk about that on this channel occasionally. Abdullah again, hi, I'm not living in a country where English is spoken, but I'm stuck to EFL approach to get ownership level, as you said. Very good. That's the plan. So you don't need to live with English speakers. You don't even need to speak with English speakers. You just need to get that input. So right now, you are getting input that's helping to destroy doubt. So I don't want you to waste time just listening to random English. The point is to answer questions you have for yourself about, there's a particular word I want to say, but I don't really know what it means. Then you have a doubt about that word. So you should fix that doubt, destroy that doubt, and then you can start using that vocabulary. But yes, you don't need to be living with natives or speaking with natives. You just need to get native input, and that's available right here on YouTube. There's lots of it. There's tons of content. You don't really need any more content. It's just figuring out how to organize it for yourself. That's the tricky part. Shang says, probably I have a mixed system of topic, comment, and subject-verb structures of language. Sometimes I hesitate thinking what to put in the subject of a sentence. Yeah, so it sounds like maybe you learned English in school where you're studying grammar rules or structures like that, and then that will train you to do that in conversations. So how you learn is how you speak. So if you want to not do that in conversations, then you need to learn more like a native. So it's important to understand grammar, but we don't want to just study grammar. We want to actually see grammar and understand how grammar works. So what does a native mean when they say something, or when does certain vocabulary get used? That's the important thing. So natives, they don't really understand, if I say, give me an example of a present perfect, or explain what that means, or tell me what a phrasal verb is, they couldn't do that. But they could use those things correctly. They would understand how to use them. And that's really the goal. So I don't actually spend much time trying to teach kind of names of grammar points. I guess it's nice to know them just so you can look them up. I know those in Japanese, but it doesn't help me knowing the name of that vocabulary. And a lot of Japanese people would not know ukemike or whatever. If I just gave them the name of some random grammar tense or whatever, they would do I don't know what that is. But anyway, it's not important to know that. The important thing is to actually be able to use it fluently. Luciano says, my mom has been a teacher for a long time, teaching grammar for Brazilians in primary and high school, and she is not able to speak fluently after all these years. You mean speak, she can't speak, when you say teaching grammar, you mean teaching English grammar? But I know actually lots of teachers are like that. They know what they need to know for the classroom, and it's usually easy to do that as a teacher. But getting people to actually speak well, that's a different skill. So that's what I focus on. I focus on making the language understandable. So if you destroy the doubt, that's when you speak. Which book would you recommend to become fluent in English? You should watch my series on that, Ethan. I have a book. It's These Books Get You Fluent in English. You should watch that. Hello from Mexico, says Eli or Ellie. Saying again, one more question. When do we normally express things in a passive voice? Is it frequently used in conversation or speech? I think people typically speak in or not use a passive voice because those constructions are more difficult to make. So it's like I was, like the thing was taken. Like you could say that, but like typically people say someone took something. Like the jewelry was taken. It's like, yeah, you could say that, but it's like someone took the jewelry is just like a faster way to say that. So again, if you're looking for examples of things like that, like, I mean, this is the kind of thing we cover in Fluent for Life, just so people can understand the difference in them. But typically, passive voice would be used less often, just because it's just typically longer to use. DeTrickland says, by the way, I was waiting for your stream on Monday, but you didn't come up. Anyway, thank you, sir. Yes, well, where was I? I think, well, my older daughter was sick. I did not do a video on Monday. Elizabeth says, for your speak fluent English, listen a lot of things is the most important in practice with other people who speak native English. Yeah, I would not, like... Let me be very clear about this. The point number one is not to just listen to lots of English, because the goal is not just to get input. It's like to get specific input that will destroy the doubts that stop you from speaking. All right. So this could come from tasting something, or from I don't know, from like feeling something. Like if I feel the difference between hard and soft, or let's see. Like I could see a visual example of something or whatever. But the point is for me not to just listen to the language, but to understand the language well. All right. And it's often better to do this visually, or you're getting to touch something or taste something or whatever, you're hearing it. But that's how you become fluent. And the second thing is, no, you don't need to spend a whole bunch of time speaking. I would spend more time actually just listening to lots of examples of native people speaking, just like you're doing here. All right, let's see. Raf says Poland. Hi, Drew. I'm from Myanmar. Glad to hear. And okay, we got our examples over here for our word deb. All right, thank you. Good night, says Ethan. And taking off. Deb. Hi, I'm from Russia. Let's see. I don't understand how to use deb. Yeah, deb is not an English word. This is just an example of like teaching someone in language as a first language. So I can't use a translation to teach you that. I could, but if I use a translation, then you will think about a translation and not really understand the word. But as you get more examples of it, you think, oh, I guess dep probably means like transport or moving or carrying something, or like it's not vehicle because there's a person over here too. Let's see. So don't worry about this specific word. It's not an English word. Bridget says, it's true some people are born not able, that's true, some people born not able to speak, but they are fluent in a language because they listen well and they go on to write brilliant articles, books, exactly. Yeah. So again, like you don't have to speak to get fluent, all right? If you did, like it's not really possible how that would work, because you don't, your speech doesn't help you understand the language better, and it's really understanding that lets you actually use the language. Pato says, imagine I'm American in the example of birds. Tori, how can I block the meaning in my language bird so I can use it without relating it to the word I knew from before in another language? I talk about this in a program I have called How to Remember Any English Word. And the idea for specific things that are tricky like that is you're trying to create like a new category of thing in your mind. So the example one of the examples I give in that training is if I have, I'm trying to learn a word in Japanese. So this is a personal example from my life learning Japanese. So if there's a word that I already know something for in English, so let's say like this is moss, and I'm going to draw a really bad picture of it because it's kind of hard to draw moss. But moss is kind of like a little plant that you see on maybe tree branches or on the ground in a kind of wet area. Moss, usually green, something like that. So if I have moss, that word is already in my head in English. How do I remember that word in Japanese? So what I have to do is actually create a new category in my mind of something like mas, which is like, okay, I hear the word. So the Japanese word for this is koke. But I could try to learn a new category for this in different ways. One of them is I could combine it with another word to create a new kind of story. So as an example, we have there's kind of a decoration thing in Japan that looks like this. There might be a flower or a small tree or a plant or something on a ball like this. And the ball sits on a tray. So this is a kind of Japanese decoration called a kokedama. Kokedama. And kokedama is like, we've got like, koke means moss, and tama, or dama in this case, means ball. So we have a moss ball. Now that is something I had not seen in English, so this creates a new category in my mind of like, oh look, a moss ball, which helps me to remember the word koke. Or I could also remember like actual different kinds of moss. And so I just use one example like yamagoke is a particular kind of moss. And I know this because I studied gardening in Japan. So I might have like, I'll just write it in English for you, like yamagoke. So yamagoke, it's like mountain moss, basically, and this would help me understand the word mountain as well. And you could probably guess what the word mountain is from that example, and that's how you would learn the word mountain in Japanese. And so often the examples that we get for learning a new language, we're able to understand things by the connections we make, and that's how we understand something as a first language. All right? So hopefully that makes sense. So it's easy to take things that we know already, like we have a word for that thing in our native language. If I'm clear, that's what you're asking me about. But that's how you would do it. So you create new connections in your mind that help you remember that thing and use it fluently. All right. Let's see. I think, did I skip one? Says Peter Lou says, hello from Shanghai. Thanks for your live. It really helps. Glad to hear it. Pado says, oh, okay, I got that word all right. All right, George says, could you read Japanese horse racing game via radio commentary? Could I read Japanese horse racing game via radio commentary? I don't know what do you mean, George? Like the way of someone commentating on a horse race, like a Japanese person doing that. I don't even know what that Japanese would be. Like how that, I just don't, I could speak like about a baseball game because I know that a little bit better, but like horse racing, I don't know what that would be. But if I went to horse races or I played those games and I heard that a lot, then I would get fluent in that kind of speech. In the same way like soccer commentators or whatever are doing that same thing. So like people speak differently about it, and as I spend more time with that thing, I will become better at speaking in that same way. All right, see how we're doing for time here. Oh, Cam, nice to see you there. Sorry, I'm late. Miguel says, teacher, will you vote for Donald Trump for president? Yeah, we'll see if he survives. Hopefully he survives. But yeah, I probably will. I have not voted in like forever. That's a long story though. Heartbeat, let's see, message disappeared. Do I have to express my day-to-daily life? I mean, what I did the whole day to myself in English in order to improve my speaking, because I have been listening podcasts that didn't work for me. No. Why? No, I don't know why you would do that. I mean, there are things you can do. All right, as I explained at the beginning of this video, because most people think you need to speak to get fluent, then people will tell you advice about how to speak to get fluent. But I'm not doing that. I'm saying you don't have to speak to get fluent. You actually speak by understanding the language better. So if you're listening to a podcast and it's not helping you understand the language better, stop listening to it. Find actual examples of things, like watching a children's TV show would be a better idea because you get to see examples of the language and really understand it. So based on your writing, that's what I would recommend for your level. So no, you don't have to sit and try to talk with yourself to get fluent. Don't spend time talking with yourself. Spend more time getting examples of things that you don't understand so that you can destroy the doubt. And that's what really stops you from speaking. Pato says, got it, thanks. And Lester says, congrats for your podcast. Speaking of Japanese, it would be interesting to see you again with your couple. Greetings from Tepik. You mean my wife? Yeah, maybe I could get her on a video someday. We'll see. Anyway, hopefully this makes sense. But again, if you'd like to learn more, you can click on the links in the description below this video. The basic idea is that you don't get fluent by speaking. Speaking is not what develops fluency. Fluency actually develops speech. Okay, so begin there. Just really think about that idea. I know it sounds weird and it's the opposite of what everybody tells you about language learning, but it makes sense because if you've been trying to speak and it's not helping you, then stop doing that. You don't have to hope that you get fluent because you keep speaking. Don't worry about that. Actually, spend more time destroying the doubts that stop you from speaking, and you will become a more fluent speaker. All right. If you'd like to help or have me do this for you, basically, you can click on the links in the description below this video, and I'll see you in the next video.